Can I just thank everyone who came here on a Sunday morning, because that's remarkable. A great achievement. I came in from West London myself, and I'm still slightly waking up, so I apologise if I'm sluggish at first. So, first of all, the panel discussion today, we're going to have a sort of a quick intro for all the fantastic speakers here, as well as Phyll, who's just in a cab on Warren Street, who's been held up unavoidably. Sorry, please take a seat. We're going to be discussing and celebrating lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and queer activism in Africa. And then we're going, and by Africans in the diaspora, with the diaspora. And before I sort of get into that discussion, we'll have a quick intro. So we've got Reverend Roland Jide-Macaulay, who is the founding pastor of the Rainbow Fellowship, a brilliant man, a multiple award winner at the LGBT Community Awards, including Man of the Year in 2003 and 2007. That's right. Man of the Year twice, oh my goodness, amazing. And so there he is, literally the Man of the Year. And the fantastic Bisi Alimi, the first ever African to come out on TV, Nigerian TV in 2004. The show was cancelled immediately afterwards, and all future guests were screened because they didn't trust the setup of the show. An amazing man, a great advocate for gay issues. Really. I mean, your biography is incredible.
Embrace it.
No, really, exactly. Trust me. I'm a total fanboy. I read their bio. It's just incredible the work you've done. It's really inspiring. Came out in 2004 on TV. That was 10 years ago, obviously, and so much has changed then. And you've been a direct catalyst for change. A great advocate for HIV/AIDS issues as well. Now living here with a master's in public policy and global governance from the University of Birkbeck. So he's also an academic, as well as he's a gentleman and a scholar. And we're also going to introduce later Phyll Opoku-Gyimah, who is the founder and trustee of UK Black Pride back in 2005. Also a multiple award winner of the LGBT Community Awards. A brilliant woman, a distinguished career and civil servant. And then there's me. Still a young pup compared to these two in terms of activism. Really, like, they've done so much, and I'm kind of learning, really. I'm standing in for the fantastic Jessica Horn, who herself is a wonderful and distinguished activist in LGBT issues, who's done brilliant work with grassroots activists in Africa for many, many years. And I'm standing in for her because she sadly couldn't be here, so I'm really here as, I think, a student as much as you. My name is Musa Okwonga. I'm a journalist and a poet and a football writer, bizarrely enough, and a PR consultant. And I've written about various issues, including bisexuality, lesbian, gay, trans issues, for publications such as The Independent, The New Statesman, Al Jazeera, and Medium Matter, which is a kind of Twitter platform for blogging. So, without further ado, let's get going. So, maybe Roland first.
If you call me Jide.
Jide, you like Jide?
Please.
So I've always...
Okay. Yeah.
Jide's great. Well, I like it. It's more musical. So full of compliments today. So both of you, but Jide first. We're here to celebrate LGBTQ activism. What do you regard as being the major things we should be celebrating at the moment?
I think we should celebrate the fact that we've come a long way, in recognizing a lot of the achievements, which are often not recognized. For example, when the Black LGBT community introduced the awards in 2003, it was an opportunity to highlight the celebration of LGBTQ activism. And I remember early this year as well, when people were asking me, what can we do to help LGBT people? Because in Nigeria in January, there was the passing of the anti-gay law, followed by the passing of the anti-gay law in Uganda. So it feels that, the whole of African continent is actually going to melt down. Well, it's actually melting down. But I think that what someone asked me is that, what can we do? I said, well, let's celebrate the activists and the activism that's been going on. Let's have a party. And, people look at me and say, well, but there is, there's a fire on the roof or something like that, but you want a party. I said, well, the important thing is that, let's begin to highlight the achievements so far, and that in itself, will show to people that we are here and we're here to stay. I think that the idea wasn't original. It's something, that campaign in the US that says, get to know us. If we do not have an event or a program that showcase the LGBT people of Africa, it means that we're continually living in denial. People will not get to know us. But the more they get to know us, the more that we're celebrated, then they will know that we're part of society. So that's, for me, one major reason why we should celebrate. Highlighting the achievement. It's been a struggle. A lot of people have not been acknowledged nor honored for what they've done, what they've been through. And that represents this event today.
Fantastic, thank you. And Bisi, your thoughts?
I think I share most of what Jide said, but I think what is happening on the continent, where I would disagree a little bit, calls for less celebration and more reflection. I think there's a time and place for us to celebrate. The time is not now. I think this is a very sober moment on the continent. Jide will agree with me that this year alone we've lost a couple of activists, and I think personally for me it's a very sorry state of mind, and I think instead of celebration, what I would want us to do is to reevaluate our activism on the continent. I think there's this whole idea of structure of homonationalism that is taking hold on the continent, and that is the fact that, we have problem with identity. So we have this identity crisis about what really makes me an African man who is in love with another man.
Right.
I don't want to use the word gay. So what makes me an African who is a woman who's in love with another woman? So the whole concept of sexuality is something that is dictated over time without me being involved in it.
Right.
Over a long period of time, and that has created a kind of conflict about who am.
Is that because of a Western lens? That's the
I was trying not to say that.
Well, that's fine. We're here.
But you brought it out of my
Wait, we're all
mind.
out of the closet. Once you've done that, nothing's scary anymore. Let's not be afraid of semantics.
Yeah, so I think so. We have a problem with the Western enforced ideology of sexuality,
right.
And so I automatically would think that I have to do things the way it's been done because there are rule books of what activism is. And I think it's time for us to have a reflection on what really should be the African approach to this activism. And that reflection is, I don't know what the answer is, but I was discussing with a friend recently, and because I just read an article written by a very brilliant African, is Kenyan, David Kuria, and was saying, homosexuality is African, homophobia is not an African. And I was having a conversation with a friend, and I remember that he looked at me and he said, no, homosexuality is an African. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, because I'm not a homosexual, I'm just a man who is in love with another man. And I was a little bit shocked, and he was trying to explain to me, as stupid as it might sound, that homosexuality is a Western connotation. It creates a picture in the mind of anybody who hears it. And most especially so much so in the minds of Africans. There is a connotation of what an homosexual is. So much so there's a connotation of or a picture of what a gay person is based on, again, the Western media of what a gay person is. So if you don't fit those boxes of what a gay person is based on what we've been told a gay person is,
right,
then there's a conflict. Then people said, oh, but you don't look gay, but you don't act gay, because they have what it is. They have the idea of what it is like. And this is something I think that the Africans are revolting against in a way, in an unconscious way. So I think...
That's interesting. So there's almost like the parallel challenge of, is coming out, but then what am I coming out into? What am I emerging into? Or am I even coming out? I'm just acknowledging my love for another man or another, there's some of the same gender. So it's like a double. So we're talking about celebrating, but actually it's more like this is a period of challenge.
Can I just? I'm not going to disagree with BC. It's so difficult to disagree with him. But I just want to kind of express a little bit more for everyone to understand. Yes, the situation in Africa is quite grim at the moment. Yeah, I mean, even in the past few days, Gambia has introduced an anti-gay bill, and we know that the Gambian president is already a crazy person anyway. So, to have a bill against the LGBT community is going to be terrible. Yes, what are we celebrating? But of course, the question is that is it okay to celebrate? If today is about highlighting the celebration, I think it's truly and honestly to celebrate the achievements so far, and also recognize that we have a long way to go, much more long way to go. Over 30 countries in Africa, that is nearly half of the country around the world, or more than half the countries around the world still criminalize, homosexual relationship. So we have a long way to go. I think that, today I celebrate Bisi as one of the pioneers of LGBT activism in Africa. We should celebrate that. There are many more people across the continent that needs to be celebrated. But at the same time, it's not that the celebration should overtake the reality for the millions of people in Africa, including families who are welcoming and embracing, who still cannot celebrate. I have had an opportunity to preside over gay weddings of LGBT Africans, where the Africans who are marrying people who are non-Africans do not have their own immediate families at those weddings. It is shocking and very painful that they have to go through that. But at the same time, we still need to celebrate the heroic outcome. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But there's no doubt in my mind and in the mind of everyone here that Africa is still, many years back, on these issues. And we need to find a way to move forward.
Bisi made an excellent point. I don't want to sort of lose that in what's going to our studio, because it does strike me as very interesting that you set up a church, of your own. So we'll come back to Bisi in a moment, because they're making some very important points about where Africa is now in terms of activism. But I want to sort of maybe talk to you about the challenges of setting up your own. Is it 2006? So what were the challenges setting that church up?
Well, the challenge even began even when I conceived the idea, of starting a church in Nigeria. First of all, we did a lot of background research and studies of, the need for a space for people to express their Christian beliefs and spirituality. And, we went around Nigeria. Even Bisi was very helpful in doing that as well, but I think he's in a different place right now.
I was always in a different place.
You have no idea how much I love this guy. He's made my life difficult sometimes. But I think that, it's just actually recognizing the fact that, homophobia was definitely ingrained in the religious circles in Nigeria. And, the gay people run the church. We run the usher department. We run the music department. We run everything, to be quite honest. But yet, we're being marginalized nonetheless and not celebrated. So when I trained as an inclusive theologian. I studied queer theology. And I decided in 2005 that, I would like to go back to Nigeria, to start a ministry. And I was supported by my ministry. And I went out to Nigeria, we started. Everything seems quite fine. But the challenge was almost immediate. Only a few weeks after we started, there was, remember in December, we had an article by Wall Street Journal, that was written about House of Rainbow. And the following year, 2007, in February, there was also more articles. And then because we had to go to the parliament in Nigeria to debate the anti-gay law, you were there, I was there. And so things went from really bad to worse, to the point that when people come to our fellowship meetings, they come beaten up because people have identified they're gay, they're going to the gay church. And we had to actually invest in the first aid kits and things like that, so that we know that, well, how many people are going to get beaten up and have bruises this morning? So that's going to be part of our fellowship. And the challenges were there and they were continuous. And of course, when the media, particularly those unscrupulous Nigerian journalists, found out about us, they even planted themselves within our congregation. And they're starting to take pictures and video recording, which obviously end up in the newspapers and all over the whole place. It was terrible. So 2 years of holding the ministry in Nigeria, the first 2 years was extremely challenging. We were open and welcoming. We even had CNN do a fantastic report, but the Nigerian media were absolutely shameless, about how they reported on the ministry. And but I think there were good things that came out of it. We helped a lot of people to reconcile sexuality and their spirituality and their faith. And only a few weeks ago, we celebrated 8 years of the ministry. And now in Nigeria, we've changed the dynamics of how we run things. We no longer have an open door policy, but we have 5 active groups in Nigeria, even including in the northern part of Nigeria. We've extended our ministry to LGBT Muslims in Nigeria, and we're piloting another group of LGBT Muslims in Ghana. We already have 2 Christian groups Christian groups in Ghana, one in Accra, one in Kumasi. So we're doing what we can do, but the challenges are still there. Now, the challenges include, how do we provide you with evidence of this mission going on? We don't have photographic evidence. We don't have video evidence because it's too risky. But I can tell you that we have 17 leaders that are leading House of Rainbow, mostly in Africa and in the UK.
Amazing work. Well, thank you so much, and it's terrific. That's advocacy really right there. And Bisi, tying that back in with broader activism in Africa, how do you think this perception of homosexuality through a Western lens can be improved? How do you think it can be made? How do you think that African people who have relationships, same gender sex relationships and emotional relationships, what platforms do they need to really get their message across?
Yeah, before I answer your question, I just want to say congratulations on your anniversary. I've not said that in a long time. Recently I started diving into the politics of identity, and I started understanding that nobody can tell my story as much as I can tell my story, right? And nobody can represent my issues as much as I can represent my issues. If we count on our fingers how many black gay actors do we have in any black gay storyline in the UK, it would be difficult for us to count one.
I can't think of one immediately.
Okay, thank you very much. So that answers the question. And so the problem is that when you think of homosexuality or alternative gender identity, the image that comes to your head is the image of a white person, because that is the image you've been fed all along, and it's still the same image. And when I have conversations with parents here, they still, I hear things like, that's what white people do. And Judy will agree with me, even on the continent of Africa, when you have conversation with people every time, what they tell you is that what white people do, because the image we have is an image of white people. So until we understand the intersectionality in sexuality, we're not helping ourselves. So which means we have to tell the story of black people as well, and that black people can have same-sex relationship. Black people can fall in love as a man falling in love with a woman as much as a man falling in love with a man, and that is okay. It's rational. I don't have to think I'm being possessed. I don't have to go through exorcism. I don't have to think something is wrong with me, and I can naturally do it without questioning my sensibility, and that is the role the media has got to play. When you look at Nigeria film industry, which is the biggest on the continent of Africa, they now have gay characters. But it's funny because the gay sex is always happening when when one of them is drunk, or when one of them has put poison in the drink of another one, and then the gay sex happens. So the gay sex never happens because it has to happen. I can see Lady Phyll, so I'll wait for her to join the...
Oh, Phyll, my goodness. So Phyll, good to have you with us. No, it's a pleasure. You're the star of the show. Headhunt. Fashionably. No pressure. Don't worry. Fashionably late. It's fine. So, just again. So sorry to put you on pause for a moment. So Phyll, as mentioned before, fantastic career in civil service, extremely distinguished, and my goodness, the biography is longer than most of my books. Absolutely brilliant, and what she's done is amazing. Multiple award winner at the LGBT Community Awards, and the founder and co-founder and trustee of UK Black Pride, which is amazing. Back in I think 2005, and still going strong. So here we are. Here's Phyll. Welcome, and we'll just finish your point, and then we'll come to Phyll with a question about sort of general celebration and challenges, if that's all right. Okay.
So I think we need to start creating a space for everybody. In that, I don't know how big or how small that space is, and that would demystify a lot of things. It would demystify the fact that, a mother can. We're talking about coming out. I know what my coming out has done for so many families. It's not a matter of pride, but I've seen so many people writing to me and said, I never thought that a Nigerian can be gay until when I saw you on TV, and I have doubts, I have issues about my children. I know that the work that, Chide is doing has, broken down many barriers, and it's because we are the one doing it. And when people look into their TV, they can see somebody that looks like them, and they can connect with that person. And I think that is one of the ways we need to start opening up. And it's so easy in this country, Why are the likes of Jide, myself, and Lady Phyll not going into schools in Southeast London and talking to children and having conversation with children where we have the highest population of black people, and saying, you know what, it's okay for you to be gay. It's okay for you to be different. But even when people are going into schools to do this talk, I am sorry to say this because this is what I know. They're mostly white people. I have nothing against white people, but that black kid cannot connect.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
And that is why I have problems when we have this kind of conversation.
Absolutely. So more schools, more media. Excellent. I'll go into these important practical points, because it's all very well sitting here, but the breakthrough that was made in LGBT rights in Nigeria to a large extent was made by your public appearance. So more places like that, I think more appearances definitely needed. But before I go any further, we'll talk to Phyll actually. And Phyll, you've had a great career obviously, and you continue to have a great career in this area. What would you regard as the main areas to celebrate in activism here, both for your own work and more broadly?
Okay, first of all, apologies for being late. A sister with the menopause on the public transport, it is so not happening. So if I shoot over there to get my fan, you understand why. Thank you for the invitation to speak here, and it's a great honour to be on the platform with both Judy and Bisi and yourself. I think in terms of our celebration, some people will be aware that UK Black Pride was born out of a somewhat frustration in terms of in this country and being able to celebrate and being unique and being black, and I say black in its political context of the African and Asian diaspora, our LGBT, our sexual orientation, being queer, being intersex, being bisexual, being transgender. That is why UK Black Pride was created, because we did not see ourselves in the wider mainstream Pride events. So when we're talking about what's happening abroad to our brothers and sisters, we also have to reflect it here. And I think that the great work that UK Black Pride does allows us to look at what is happening abroad and what is happening here, because more than 35-40% of people who attend UK Black Pride that are people of colour, BME, black, however one wishes to term it, are people who have come over from Uganda, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from the Caribbean, and they want to celebrate and have a place that is safe for them to be who they want to be. And I think that that's the greatest achievement of UK Black Pride, that it's a safe space for black LGBT people and their friends to look at us in the political context, but also providing a form of spiritual nourishment to us as people who have been oppressed for so many years, and not just dealing with the oppression or the issues of racism, but racism, sexism, homophobia, and all other forms of discrimination, because we're not just dealing with a one single issue here.
Fantastic. And it's interesting to me because UK Black Pride, I was last there a couple of years ago, fantastic event and platform, and the food was terrific as well. I'm glad, happy to report. But there are specific issues, obviously, that face all, also people under the LGBTQ strand. What issues have you identified being faced by lesbians and trans people in the community?
I think it's hard for me to speak for everyone because, as a black woman who identifies as a lesbian, my issues in the community when I was coming out was one of dealing with looking a particular way and not necessarily being accepted as being a lesbian, because I'm a mother of two beautiful children and I'm also a grandmother now. I know, I pause. So my kids are grown, they're 24 and 19. And when I was coming out, my journey was I was not just battling with hiding behind this mask of who I was and trying to conform to what society perceived, or our culture, being of Ghanaian parents, what culture told us was right. I was dealing with the issues of not looking like some of the lesbian women who I was surrounded by. I grew up in Hertfordshire, and, the one place for us to go and socialise was a place called Hemel Hempstead. It was a place in Hemel Hempstead. Oh my gosh, it was. Oh, you're laughing. You know it, don't you? Yeah. Then I'm not going to say anything about it. It just was.
No. I'm interested. It's interesting.
Well, I attended Hemel. And
speak your truth.
We haven't got that long. I attended Hemel, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm amongst people that really understand that sort of shared commonality of, wow, woman, she's attractive. Oh my gosh, I can look and not feel worried about just looking. Well, actually, I wasn't accepted. And there was I used the term butch because it was a butch woman. And I looked and I thought, wow, whatever. And I smiled, and she said, and excuse my French, she said, what are you fucking looking at? So I just, I thought to myself, okay, maybe this is not for me. But, I later on found out that she was not somebody that was accepting or tolerant of black people. Forget the issue of sexual orientation, but tolerance of black people. So my journey of coming out is not one of inclusivity, it's one of frustration. And I think that if we're looking at the scene and the issues here, can you imagine what it's like being back home in Ghana or Nigeria or Uganda, and not even having a safe space to go and to look at somebody who shares, as I said, that commonality with you of being lesbian, bisexual, gay, queer, however you wish to identify. So I think that there are many things that we need to work on in terms of acceptance, and certainly within our own LGBT community, before we start challenging and tackling the legal issues of what's happening abroad. We need to get our own house in order, because racism is rife in our community. We're discriminatory towards bi people, we're discriminatory towards trans people, and it looks terrible because it then shows us that people who feel or understand oppression to a greater or lesser degree are the same ones doing the oppressing. So I think that, till we start looking at some of these issues at home, it's very, very hard for us to look at international affairs, apart from just jumping up and saying, oh yeah, I'm going on that demonstration because that is really bad what they're doing in Uganda. Well, actually, look at yourself first. And let's start here. Sorry. I'm letting you talk because, frankly, your experience in this field is vast, and that's actually a fantastic strategic point to make. I think there's too much triumphalism over, the UK, we've got it so great, let's go and campaign against X, Y, Z. But, I felt, as a bisexual man, as a Ugandan, I know, I really pick them, don't I? As a bisexual Ugandan man, I found far more acceptance in the Stonewall football team than I did on the gay scene.
because I found the gay scene to be very commercial, very sort of monotone, if I may be so frank. So the Stonewall football team actually was great because it was a model of diversity. We had 9 different nationalities out of 11 starting players. We had Brazilians, we had Japanese. The photo is like the best looking group of guys you've seen. Yeah, trust me. Not that I was there to play football. You always have to say that. But you make a very good point about the call for diversity and great inclusivity in our own community. I want to throw that back to Jide and Bisi as well. How do you feel we can work, and this is to all of us, but I'll go back to them as well. How do you feel we can work then to improve that inclusivity in our communities?
Well, actually, for me, I think that there are many issues, and inclusivity might not be possible overnight. But inclusivity needs to start also from within the gay community. And I recognize what Phyll has actually analyzed there, because I personally, and probably many other people, experience some form of prejudice from within the gay community in the UK. But I also experienced prejudice from within the gay community in Nigeria, because I was told, earlier on that, your ministry in Nigeria is not going to last a year. You have come to cause trouble in Nigeria, and at the moment of any kind of, problem, you are definitely going to leave us in a mess. And there was no actual support. And I feel that, I think that the key issue now is, how do we create a form of togetherness, and how do we move forward on that? There is a lot that we can do. First, in my opinion, is actually for the LGBT community to get it right. We need to understand every area of marginalization within our community. We also, for me as a theologian, we also need to understand our own theology. I'm not just talking queer theology, I'm talking African queer theology. We need to understand how we interpret and translate all the scriptures that actually identify us and promotes our well-being. That to me is very important. Of course, if I trained here in the UK and in the US in matters of queer theology, there's not a single theological organization in Africa that actually train LGBT issues. And those who even try to bring up the issues are also demonized. So we have a lot of issues going on. Yep. We need to identify all the differences as well. LGBTIQ means LGBTIQ, and there shouldn't be any segregation.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Bisi.
I think my reply to that is that we have a lot to do on the individual level, but I also think that part of our individual responsibility is to challenge the institutions that represent us, which we're not doing very well. And I've been called a madman recently because I was taking on Stonewall on a daily basis. And I wouldn't stop. And I've told Stonewall that I will not stop until Stonewall actually becomes an LGBT organization. And they should stop using me to make money. And I told Ruth, I will not stop. I would hunt them on Facebook. I will hunt them on Twitter. I will hunt them everywhere I need to go. Because when you talk about LGBT issues in the UK, the first organization on a global level that comes to mind is Stonewall. And if Stonewall has become a charity that should have its office right in the middle of the city anyway, so they shouldn't have it next door where they have it in Waterloo, because they've become like the bankers as well. If they are going to be using my interests to make money, they should represent me. And I think they have a lot of weight to carry in this collective, in the fight for this inclusiveness. And they're not doing that. To imagine that it's taken Stonewall 25 years to understand that the T in LGBT actually means trans people. So which means for the first time this year is the only time Stonewall is doing anything. And they're not doing anything trans. They are now going out to the trans community to say, come and tell us what you want us to do for you. But we should not forget that even the name that Stonewall prides itself on is a name that started with a riot in New York by trans people.
Right.
So if an organization that represents us and is 25 years old do not even know the community it's representing, how much more do you want the people that they are representing to know the issues? I'm not absolving people of racism. I'm not absolving people of sexism. But I think that, like what Lady Phyll talked about, you have to challenge it. When people were turned back at clubs in Manchester because of the color of their skin. I went there. And I went there to cause trouble, and I said, this is not going to happen in this United Kingdom, because this, and we need to, in our own little, we need to challenge it, but some of us don't really have the means to always challenge this. So we have to go to organizations like Stonewall that are representing us. Fantastic idea, they have Lace Up that they are doing now about football. But what if, as a gay person, I don't really follow football? That the homophobia I'm facing is right in the middle of Peckham.
Right. And actually an outstanding point you make about Stonewall, because, where are the trans trustees, where are the trans grant makers? And actually Stonewall, while we're on this critique, the campaign with the Rainbow Laces football, I'm a football writer myself, I have a bit of disquiet with that, because Paddy Power to me is actually quite a homophobic organisation. They're transphobic. They tweeted transphobia about Serena Williams during one of the last tournaments at Wimbledon, saying that she looked like a I think it's sort of...
Yeah, this she looks like a man.
If the best alliance that we can find to fight on behalf of gay people is one which is highly questionable, which I think is pinkwashing its reputation. I think Paddy Power is very cynical. I think Paddy Power is a company that wants to use the issue of being gay-friendly as a future buttress against future critiques. So we say in future, it's Paddy Power, we did the thing for the gays. But I have an issue with them as well.
Let me before I round up. Look, so recently I've started, I'm on the board of Stonewall Housing, and I saw a statistic. So Shelter released a statistic recently, I think that was last year, to say that of young people between 16 and 24 that are homeless in the UK, 40% of them are from the LGBT community. Now, no organizations in the UK, not even Stonewall, is standing up to say that, our youth are sleeping on the street. I'm not against gay marriage. I'm happy for gay people who wants to get married to get married. But the future is what we are destroying now, because those kids are going to grow up, and they're going to grow up hot in a country where we are so consumed about the fact that, I want to get married. Why we forget that there are 40% of young people. But what was shocking out of that data that came out was 76% of that 40% were from the BME community.
That is extraordinary.
And nobody, absolutely nobody cares about that. And for me as a black man, sitting in a board meeting and looking at this data, I broke down. I couldn't help myself. And I was like, what can I do differently? If 77% of black LGBT people are being kicked out by their family and are sleeping on the streets. So I watch, documentaries about young Jamaicans sleeping in the gutter, and it comes here and it's a problem of Jamaican. But it's happening right next door, and we get so disillusioned, and it goes back to what Lady Phyll is. We're so consumed about solving other people's problems that we don't solve ours.
Excellent point. And so, Phyll, your views.
What do I think we can do? I think education. And you mentioned about going into schools, vitally important. As far as I'm concerned, no child is born racist, homophobic, transphobic, and, is born with any form of discrimination. That is certainly a learnt and taught behaviour. So if education is tailored in a way to ensure that we're including the issue of sexual orientation, racism, and now Michael Gove has gone. Let's see what the new minister wishes to do, because, there's been various attacks on, what is taught in schools. The other thing that I believe we wholeheartedly need to do is build allies. We don't do that enough. We don't go cross-section and look at, well, what is happening in the disabled community that could possibly reflect and help us challenge the issues of homophobia, because I go back to that shared commonality. I watched, not to digress, but I watched the film Pride, and this was about the lesbians and gays in that went to Wales, the miners, and it was so moving. I cried, I laughed, I cried, and it showed that their struggle was the minor struggles, and the minor struggle was the LGBT, the lesbian and gay struggle, and this is what I think we have so lost, because I want to be able to go to a sister group which may be dealing with issues of, health and inequalities and, the lack of safe housing, and explain to them my issues of racism and how it feeds into what's happening. So building those allies is vitally important. And if we don't do that, we are fighting a losing battle. I'm not here to advocate for any political party, but we are on the run-up to a general election. And I think that there are massive attacks on various parts of the community. So whether it's about welfare, whether it's about, immigration and black people or BME people being scapegoated, we really need to build allies to have a collective voice to challenge some of these inequalities and injustices that are happening. And until we come together collectively and understand that your struggle is my struggle and my struggle is your struggle, as well as looking back on our history, not forgetting her story, we're not going to be able to be strong enough to challenge these things. But most importantly, I think it's about listening, and each one teach one, and that's a very common phrase that's been used. But education, starting from our young, building allies and helping them to understand the issues that we go through and understanding the issues that others go through. Also bringing into the international dimension, but becoming politically astute of what is happening in today's society and understanding that our rights that we have now had been hard fought for and did not come overnight. So, this is going to be a long, hard challenge here and abroad. It's not going to come overnight. So there's a lot to do.
Well, that's terrific. And I think that raises an interesting... Sorry, there's some applause there. Sorry, Sorry, no, I saw you about to clap. I didn't want to. No, you're quite right. No, you're quite right. A fantastic contribution, and I think you make an interesting point, because it's not just celebration for the sake of celebration, but celebration for the sake of remembrance and actually understanding. This is not a complacent platform we sit on, and actually, in many respects, we're the few that have made it. Many of us don't make it to this point. I was telling Jide before we got up here that I actually I was shouting at a group of youths in the street 2 days ago because one of them called someone a faggot. He was screaming. A friend of mine was calling, and I went nuts. And my point was really, and they were like, Musa, why didn't you? They were all sort of straight, my friends. They're like, you overreacted. My point was, I don't think I did, because the suicide rate for gay teens is twice as high as straight people. So it's hard enough being a teenager, and then it's tough enough again being gay. And I was like, and he said, well, anger teaches nothing. And I said, well, it does teach something, because we can't always be Martin Luther Kings. We can't always be, not even that, even Martin Luther King wasn't always like peace and love.
Yes.
We can't always be passive. You have to show a bit of teeth, because for the next person that these people meet, they might think twice before shouting that in public. So, activism is an ongoing thing, and I stand on a platform, I sit on this platform with you today as someone who is a beneficiary of people I never met doing this vital work. And hopefully one day there'll be people that never met us, whose lives will be slightly easier because of the work that you're all doing.